Effectively wild. Effectively wild. Effectively wild.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2512 of Effectively Wild, a baseball podcast from FanGraphs presented by our Patreon supporters. I am Ben Lindbergh of The Ringer, not joined today by Meg Rowley of FanGraphs, who, as mentioned last time, is currently enjoying, or I hope she's enjoying, her first ever colonoscopy, her rookie colonoscopy. My boss, Bill Simmons, recently woke up from a colonoscopy to the news of a Jaylen Brown trade. So who knows what trades Meg might wake up to. I can say with some confidence that had she been here, the topic of today's pod, for better or worse, would have been different. However, joining me in Meg's stead are two comic book experts who happen to be baseball lovers and who teamed up on a panel at San Diego Comic-Con just last week, which, unbeknownst to them, was a mere prelude to this podcast appearance. It was a prequel to this pod. First, the newly Eisner Award-winning David Harper, host of Off Panel, a comics interview podcast, and the founder and proprietor of Sketched, the subscription-based comic site, which just won the aforementioned Eisner for best comics-related periodical/journalism, and as evidence of that fact, has featured posts such as the Hall of Fame of superhero comics being weird at sports.
Oh, yeah.
Comics Seriously, The Avengers Go Moneyball, which featured input from none other than Ben Lindbergh, and, most relevant to today's episode, a Justice League of their own, fantasy drafting the best comic baseball teams possible. He's also a Mariners fan, so we've maintained our typical quota of Mariners fans on an Effectively Wild episode. David, welcome and congrats on bringing home the hardware.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thankfully, the Mariners are keeping me humble because they're just continuously depressing me, as Meg, I'm sure, knows plenty about.
Speaking of fans whose teams have kept them humble, also with us is one of this year's Eisner Award judges. I hope there's no conflict of interest there.
No conflict of interest.
Good. Tiffany Babb is the editor of the comics criticism journal, The Comics Courier, as well as the forthcoming monthly comic zine, The Comic Staple, which David will also be contributing to. She is the host of the podcast Interesting Jobs, which has featured multiple baseball-themed episodes just this month, and the founder of the baseball website, The Fan Files, at thefanfiles.com. And as I just alluded to, unfortunately for her, she is an Angels fan. So we would have an AL West rivalry brewing happening here if the Angels ever posed a threat to the other teams in that division. Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you. It's pretty rough right now, not going to lie.
It's been rough for a while.
Yeah.
That is true.
Well, I'm so happy to have you both. How do you two feel about having gotten the call due to a colonoscopy? Does that take away at all from the great honor, the flattering offer to appear on Effectively Wild?
When you're called up, that's you got to take the opportunity and you got to make of it what you can.
That's
right?
how you know you're an Angels fan, when you're getting the much faster call up than you would expect.
It's true.
Yep. Can't control the circumstances. Just got to make the most of them. And today we will be drafting teams of superheroes. And you two have the expertise to do that. And one could question the timing, I suppose. Why are we drafting teams of superheroes to play baseball on the eve of the trade deadline? But you know what? That's actually why we're doing this in a way. This would obviously be good off-season fodder, and maybe we'll do a sequel sometime. But we're kind of trapped by the schedule right now because we're recording Friday afternoon, a few days before the deadline, and there are only so many moves that have been made. Tiffany, I'm sure you could talk about Logan O'Hoppe and Chase Silseth at great length, but I'm not sure how compelling that would be for other people. And
not at all.
Yeah.
Nobody cares except for us.
We're not here to talk about AJ Minter going to the Twins.
There's only so much Minter material that I have, actually. So whatever trade speculation we could engage in would have a short shelf life. So rather than say some stuff that would be instantly outdated, we'll save all the trade takes for next time when Meg has recovered and returned, and we'll do an in-depth breakdown of all the trades that are made or not made. But hopefully this will be a fun diversion. And I do have one brief bit of baseball banter before we talk superheroes and also your baseball backgrounds. Have you been following the saga of Harrison Bader and his scooter accident?
Oh, yeah. Electric scooters are dangerous.
Yes, not accident singular, but Harrison Bader now has a history of getting into accidents with his scooter. And I guess this kind of, people are talking about Kyle Shanahan's mysterious crash, the 49ers coach. So if you're talking about vehicular accidents involving Bay Area sports teams, that's probably taking up most of the oxygen these days. But I am far more fascinated by Bader because he is now a repeat offender. And the Giants have a history also of vehicle accidents. There was Madison Bumgarner and his motorcycle ride and injury. There was, of course, the notorious Jeff Kent incident where he claimed to have hurt himself washing his car.
Oh, yeah.
And then it turned out actually he was riding his motorcycle. And now he's a Hall of Famer. So let that be a lesson to all of us, I guess. Setbacks don't stand in our way forever when you have the Errors Committee to bail you out. But Harrison Bader now was already injured, right? So he signed a 2-year deal prior to this season with the Giants, and he's played 30 games for them and has not played particularly well in those 30 games. And it seems like he will not be playing in any more games for them this season because he was already dealing with lower body ailments and foot problems. He has plantar fasciitis in his foot, which he's been dealing with, the left foot, since late May. And that was already jeopardizing his season. But then it comes out that around 2 a.m. on Sunday, he aggravated this injury and complicated the recovery because he got into an accident on his scooter. Sounds like his faculties were somewhat impaired, as one might imagine, I guess. Although you could be stone cold sober and still hurt yourself on a scooter, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They could be death traps. Scooters, not as big in New York. I mean, my daughter has one. I have one, a non-motorized kind, but the kind that people just leave lying around the street as they do in LA for whatever reason. Not quite as prevalent here, but those things, you can run over people. The batteries sometimes explode. All sorts of things can go wrong. But when there's drinking involved, evidently Bader was doing some bar hopping, and he was seen leaving Balboa Cafe. and there are police reports. I mean, the media has been all over this, right? Tony Vitello, who always has some sort of word salad quote, he said, obviously he's not better than he was prior to that, which is one way to put it, I guess. And Vitello, the San Francisco manager, conceded that it would delay the recovery process for him. And this just, I think, is entered now in the annals of weird baseball injuries, right? He was taken to a hospital. It was not a life-threatening injury, fortunately, but he had to have an MRI to understand the severity of the injuries sustained from the scooter accident. That is a quote from the San Francisco Giants. This happened the day before he was due to fly to Indianapolis to meet with a foot and ankle specialist.
That's wild.
Yes.
They have a lot more to go over now, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a longer consultation and more tests. So Giants fans are not pleased with Harrison Bader because of his performance or lack thereof. And this just adds injury to insult, I suppose. So I don't have any mechanized motorized scooter experience personally, but stay away from those things, I guess, especially if you have a foot injury, a pre-existing foot injury, and you are a professional athlete and you have been imbibing.
Do we know if the fire truck was moving or was it parked?
That's an excellent question. That does affect things to some extent because, yes, according to a witness, his scooter crashed into the back of a San Francisco Fire Department fire engine, the wheel of which then rolled over his foot.
Oof.
The fire engine's wheel or the scooter's wheel? Because that makes a huge difference.
I read it as the
right?
scooter's wheel, but now I'm like, oh my gosh.
The way that that's phrased, it would imply that it was the fire engine truck that rolled over his foot. But hopefully that's not the case, but
This consultation's getting longer in Indianapolis. It's going to be a big one.
Yeah. I take it that I'm interpreting this as the fire engine ran over his foot, but that
I
sounds,
did too.
I feel like that would be, way more severe than people are talking about it.
Did you see that he also has a history of actually crashing into parked cars, or parked vehicles? So, like, this is not a first timer. Harrison
That's
Bader,
the thing. Yeah.
Stop it. Get a driver, man.
Yes, because there was a 2014 incident, right? And that's what came out in the wake of this. Or, this was already public knowledge, but people dredged it up. When he was in college and he was playing for the University of Florida, he was suspended for being involved in a scooter accident early on a Sunday morning.
Oh, my God. So it was also a scooter.
History repeating itself. Yes. And I guess if you're going to get hurt on a scooter, maybe the wee hours of Sunday morning makes some sense because you may have been drinking at that time. According to a Gainesville Police Department incident report, Bader was southbound on Southwest 10th Street when he hit a curb on his scooter and then struck a parked Ford F-150 pickup truck. Bader was found on the ground next to his scooter and was unresponsive. According to the report, there was a strong odor of alcohol. Bader was transferred to Shands Hospital with, again, non-life-threatening injuries. So,
wow, that sounds serious, though. Like if he wasn't waking up.
Yeah. I'm making light of this. It's possible that he actually does have some sort of problem here, which I wouldn't want to make light of. We know of these two isolated incidents, but when you know of two alcohol-induced scooter accidents, are we to think that those were the only times that he was riding a scooter, I guess, irresponsibly after perhaps having drunk too much? Perhaps not, right? So I don't know what's going on with Harrison Bader and drinking and scooters, but I think he should be a bit more careful. He should save his scooter riding for after his athletic career.
Yeah, and maybe call an Uber.
That too.
I know that that teams have historically built into contracts you can't play pick up basketball or something like that. Could his next team build into their contract that you cannot ride a scooter?
It would be prudent, right? I wouldn't be shocked if there is some language in his current contract that
probably
might forbid that, right? Riding any kind of, I guess these reports don't actually specify that it was a motorized scooter this time, but I assume so, right? But I would think that there might be contract language about doing that, and especially doing it after having been drinking, right? That's why Kent made up the story about washing his car, right? Because you're not really allowed to ride motorcycles in some cases, or Bumgarner and his dirt bike or whatever. But
right.
Yeah, when this has happened to you multiple times, maybe one time in college you could write it off as youthful indiscretions and I learned my lesson and I won't do it again. But he did the exact same thing again with the same kind of vehicle at exactly the same time of the week, which suggests to me that he has not done enough reflection.
I do like the idea that it was a non-motorized scooter, so he was just rolling around on a razor scooter.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Harrison Bader?
That he had to carry with him bar to bar.
Yeah, like my daughter's little pink with the streamers hanging from the handlebars and a little bell that you can go ding, ding. Yeah, it probably wasn't one of those. Anyway, I don't know what you can get charged with. I assume, can you get a DUI, DWI?
I think so.
It must be serious because it is motorized, yeah.
Right, yeah. I don't know if there's a scooting while under the influence or something, but probably it would be contained within that same category. Anyway, we wish Harrison Bader well, and also anyone who is in his vicinity, I guess, when he is
Any
on
parked
scooter.
cars.
Yeah, so please be careful.
I feel like every trade deadline has one weird injury. Was Jonathan LaCroix breaking his hand with a suitcase when he was looking for a sock or whatever? Was that around the trade deadline? It was somewhere in the vicinity, and I just feel like every trade deadline we're like, is this person trying to not be traded by injuring themselves in an extremely unusual way? I don't think it's the case here, but still, we're always good for one.
Yeah.
You're also more likely to get injured if you're under high stress.
It's true.
Could be that.
And on a scooter.
Yes, it reminds me of, we did a stat blast recently about Glenn Allen Hill and how he had a tendency to, after he was traded, really ramp up his offensive performance for his new team. And I can sort of sympathize with him because he had a notorious injury where, according to him at least, he had a bad dream about a spider because he had a touch of arachnophobia. And so he was having a bad dream, a nightmare about a spider. And he woke up and he was still kind of groggy, and he jumped out of bed and ran into another room and crashed through a glass table.
Oh my God.
And suffered several bruises and had to go on the injured list. And I recently suffered a glass table induced injury prior to podcasting as well, where the top of the glass table fell onto my head close to my eye. And I have just now recovered from that, where you can really no longer see a mark from that. So
Goodness.
It was glass table induced, or just me induced, because it was user error to some extent, I will admit, nonetheless.
That's scary, though.
Everyone, stay safe out there, and you're all on hug watch and could get traded at any time. So try to preserve life and limb, at least until then. Or there's always the Curtis Mead case of get traded and then immediately have your wrist fractured when you're making your debut for your new team. But look, if it's in a game, that can happen to anyone. If it's on a scooter early on a Sunday morning when you've been drinking, that probably shouldn't happen to anyone. Okay, so comics, baseball. Why are we doing this now? Well, one, because it'll be fun. Also, because, look, Spider-Man Brand New Day is out, right? And dominating the box office, potentially poised to set some records. So much for superhero fatigue doesn't apply to Spider-Man. The Spider stands are all crowding the box office this weekend, as we will be, perhaps. And also, look, there's X-Men 97 Season 2 going on. We're hot on the heels of Comic-Con. It just feels appropriate. So I want to hear about your comics backgrounds, but also your baseball backgrounds, because what would a baseball comics crossover episode be without some origin stories? So, David, how did you get into baseball?
Well, I was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and it is regionally the closest to the Seattle Mariners. I was obsessed with sports cards. I was obsessed with baseball from the very beginning, but I was 5 years old when Ken Griffey Jr. started playing, and
that'll do it.
It was basically Optimus Prime and Ken Griffey Jr., the two coolest people I'd ever seen in my entire life up until that point, and only one of them played baseball. So I was a huge fan of the Seattle Mariners from that point on. But yeah, I mean, I was ride or die. I was also like, back then I was a little bit easier to spread to other teams too. I loved the Mariners, but those Braves teams back then I was obsessed with. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I also played. I played up until I was about 16 years old, and I would say very good for an Alaska pitcher that never went anywhere with it. But that's only so good. I was never considering going pro by any means. But yeah.
Did you ever play or see the Midnight Sun game in Fairbanks?
Oh, yeah.
I've always wanted to do that, because that would be perfect for me and my sleep schedule or lack of sleep schedule. And I would enjoy that. It's a good spectator experience.
Oh, yeah. And Summer League ball in Alaska is actually shockingly good. We have an amazing history of players that came through here. I mean, like Mark McGuire, Aaron Judge. I think Randy Johnson was up here at one point. There's been a ton of really great players who come up here during the summer, because Alaska during the summer is really amazing. Just don't come when it's winter, which is basically the other 9 months of the year.
I have been there. It was lovely, but did not get to go to the Midnight Sun game. Maybe we will draft some Midnight Suns on this episode. We will see. Tiffany, how did you get into baseball?
Just a few years ago, my friend who is in comics, a letterer named Hassan Otsman-Elhaou, who just won the Eisner for Best Lettering this year, he is really into American sports. He's English. He's really into American sports. We often play this game where we're like on Google Maps and we're like, what's near you? Because we have no idea what the other's geography is. And he's just like, you're really close to Angel Stadium. And he's just like, you should go see this guy, Shohei Ohtani. And I had watched baseball as a kid. Like, my dad had brought me to stadiums and stuff, to Angel Stadium, to Dodger Stadium. He sold Dodger dogs, actually, when he was in high school, I think. Oh, and nice. I had always found it extraordinarily boring. I was like, you can go to the bathroom and shop and come back, and like nothing has happened yet.
This was pre-pitch clock.
Yeah, that's right.
Pre-pitch clock. And so I went to go see that Shohei Ohtani because I love trying new things. And I was like, why not go to a baseball game? Seems pretty cheap. And I went, and I was like, wow, this guy's pretty cool. I went to see him pitch and started reading more about Shohei Ohtani, started learning more about baseball. And then all of a sudden, like, baseball is a really big part of my life.
And now Shohei Ohtani is playing for the other LA team, the one that's actually in LA, and you are still an Angels fan.
That is true.
He has abandoned
you. She's been cursed. She's been cursed.
I'm now feeling, because this is kind of, I mean, even with we were talking about the Logan O'Hoppe, Chase Silseth thing, like I'm experiencing the feeling of the team that I came in on is just slowly disappearing for the first time.
In this case, it might not be a totally bad thing, though.
Right.
Yes, it's a good thing for the long term. But like in the moment, it is very weird and odd to just be like, oh, wow, okay, that just changed overnight. And now, like, you know, I was at the stadium last week, and now when I go this week or next week, I'm like, okay, it's different.
Yeah.
And so that's a weird feeling to have. And also kind of one of the interesting experiences of coming at it as a new fan who's very involved. It's just like I'm having a lot of these first time experiences every year.
Yeah. And I guess you get sort of spoiled when you start with Shohei Ohtani. Like,
is true.
Is it hard to have the historical perspective to understand, wow, this guy is singular, we haven't seen anything like this? Or do you just sort of absorb that from the starter? That's part of the pitch, I guess, because I took my daughter last week when you were at Comic-Con. I was taking my daughter to Citi Field to see Shohei Ohtani in hopes that would hook her on baseball. And he is often comped to superheroes. I mean, he is often described as sort of a real-life superhero. I don't know whether that made it a more natural fit for you, that you could port one interest to the other.
It is interesting. I think like because the way I approached getting into baseball was reading. Like I just read a ton of books, any baseball book I could get my hands on. And like most of those are like out of print. And like, I think picking up little bits of history from here and there, from like the dead ball era, you do kind of have a sense of like the place in history just because you're reading about different times. I feel like if I was only watching contemporary baseball, it would be harder to place.
What are your wish lists for the deadline here? I guess in David's case, it would be players you want the Mariners to acquire.
Yes.
And in the Angels case, for Tiffany, it might be players that you are willing to part with. Is there anything on your wish list, David, that you need Jerry Dipoto to acquire at some point in the next few days?
One way or another, he's going to acquire something. Whether or not I like that is going to be an entirely different story. I mean, we need someone to. You can tell I'm a ultra baseball fan because I'm referring to the Mariners as we. We really need somebody who can hit a baseball that is thrown by a left-handed pitcher. That would be a really nice start. I have to admit, like, I'm not saying that I want to replace Cal Raleigh because that would be insane, but at the same time, I'm just like, I'd really like him to stop hitting 163. I think the best deadline acquisition the Mariners could make is a fully functional Cal Raleigh, and I don't know if that's coming. But yeah, they really need a right-handed bat. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure every team in Major League Baseball would like a right-handed bat. And so the cost is going to be really high. I keep seeing that they're going to trade Emerson Hancock or Luis Castillo. I would be surprised if they can find a way to get rid of Castillo. But Emerson Hancock, I'm like, we know we're going to send someone out. Who are we going to get for him? I would really like to have an idea as to who that is. But my big things that I would like to see is I'd like somebody who can move the needle on offense. And then I would like to see Kate Anderson pitch for the Mariners. Those are my big two things, really.
Okay. And Tiffany, are you hoping that John Mozeliak can convince Artie Moreno to rip the Band-Aid off? Do you want to see Detmers, Soriano, Adele, even Neto? Whom are you willing to part with or even eager to?
I don't want to see any of it, but I mean, no one enjoys teardown, right? It's like, it's a painful, horrible thing. But like, I also understand that like something's got to change, right? Yeah. Like I am very attached to these guys. I'm very attached to Neto, but we have hit the point where we are so bad and only getting worse. You've got to pull the Band-Aid off. But I feel very emotional about it. I feel very much like I'm a backseat. Like I'm going along for the ride and I'm trying not to open my eyes until it's all over. And then I'll kind of readjust to what we have. Like it's going to be brutal, right? If we're going along the direction that they say we're going to be going, like it's going to be a rough couple years. But at the end of the day, that is what you need to do.
Yeah, it's easier to have a couple rough years when you have some hope that,
that is true.
There are better years on the other end of those rough years.
But it is hard because, like, with our rough years, there was always the promise of, like, at least we have our special boys.
Yes, right. At least there's Ohtani. At least there's Trout.
And now you're also removing the special boys.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is it's hard.
I have to say, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Dipoto and Mosaic are talking, because Joe Adell wouldn't be he is a right-handed bat. I don't know. Have your people talk to my people, Tiffany.
He's had I was there at that game where Jose Canseco'd the ball.
He also robbed 3 Mariners home runs in the same game that we lost by 1, which was
the duality of Joe Adell.
He did the first, I think it was the first in history, full count hit by pitch walk-off.
He's a record-setting individual, that Joe Adell.
Just this season.
Ben, can I give you a quick aside about Tiffany's background? Mm-hmm. So I feel like you would appreciate this. Tiffany does a lot of moderation of panels at comic conventions, and one time she did one for Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Yeah. And afterwards, she got to meet Angels legend David Eckstein.
Of course, Ashley.
Yes, that's
Star
right.
Wars legend. Yeah.
That was actually how I found out that Ahsoka Tano is married to a former Major League Baseball player, because she told me, and I was like, why is he there? Oh, my God, last name is Eckstein.
It was very exciting.
I'd feel more starstruck, I think, meeting Ahsoka than meeting David Eckstein.
Me too.
That's so interesting. I'm backwards because I meet a lot of people in things, but I don't meet a lot of baseball players.
She was a person who actually presented during the Eisner Awards, and the idea that she could hand me an Eisner Award that I won for a category was like ripped straight from my dream journal. I was like, I'm winning an award that Ahsoka Tano is handing me? Oh my God.
That is very special. And your comics origin story. So I got into comics to some extent around the time I got into baseball, I guess via the same vector, which was card collecting. So I had a binder of baseball cards, or binders, and a binder of superhero cards and cool sets, and you'd put them together and you'd have the whole team, and that was great. And the death of Superman was sort of formative for me in that era as well. And I got more into baseball ultimately than comics, but always retained some affection for them. This was a core interest for you two. So, David, you said you were very into Ken Griffey Jr. and Optimus Prime.
That's right.
Was your interest in comics kind of running in parallel with your interest in sports?
Transformers introduced me to comics. I needed a new Transformer delivery device, and I discovered comics, and I got a whole bunch of Transformers comics, and I fell in love with the medium. And I was, same thing. I was really into trading cards, sports cards, and I found the Marvel Universe trading cards, and that was like massive for me, because I'm a top 10% user of FanGraphs. I love statistics, and looking at the power ratings on the back of the cards and getting an understanding of like, holy crap, like Dagger from Cloak and Dagger has somehow won 73% of her fights. How is this possible? Turns out it was actually totally made up. But I just absolutely loved it. And like when you combine that with like the X-Men the animated series coming out a couple years later, it was game over. Basically, that just created a lifelong fan.
Yeah, I remember one of my mentors in the baseball business, Stephen Goldman at Baseball Prospectus. He wrote a piece years ago about how his interest in baseball stats and also comics was tickled by, I think it was in 1981, there was a Amazing Spider-Man annual number 15, and it had a little tidbit in there where it sort of gave a hierarchy of power levels for heroes and of rated their power and this was kind of new and novel at the time, and he was so intrigued by this, and this was a BP piece from 2011, and he was saying, well, what if we had the same sort of thing for baseball? And we kind of do now, I guess. I mean, we have the baseball savant percentiles, right, in addition to 20 to 80 scouting scale and all of those things. And something about that, it's still frustrating to this day sometimes when you have the exhausting kind of tired power level debates, right? When hero X fights hero Y and you think, well, wait, why didn't this guy beat that guy? And how is this consistent and all of that? You sort of want to approach it almost sabermetrically to say, who would triumph in this battle. But it's a little bit squishy and flexible when it comes to comics because you win some, you lose some.
Especially when there's like the lifelong thing of no matter what, Batman wins. It's just he'll find a way. I will tell you, prelude to my baseball team, their savant pages are all red. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And Tiffany, how did you get into comics?
Like baseball, I got into comics kind of late. Well, I'd grown up reading like Calvin and Hobbes, Archie, that sort of thing. But I didn't get into like superhero comics until college. And I had a friend who was really getting into superhero comics. And this was during Marvel Now. And she handed me Hawkeye by Matt Fraction and David Aja. And I was just like, okay, this is going to be my life for a little bit. And I read nothing but comics for like the next 4 or 5 years. And I talked about nothing but comics. And I just read all I could about it. And I was recently doing a spring cleaning and I found this old notebook that I had where I had pretty much written down, like I'd taken a comic book, a monthly comic book, and I'd measured the size of each panel with a ruler and kind of counted out how many panels per page and how many kind of scene beats were in each page. I have no memory of doing this, but I was very obsessive. Like at school, I was in college, so I was just like, okay, every term paper from now on, I'm going to find a way to write about comics. And I made it happen. And then slowly but surely, like it became, again, like baseball, a huge part of my life.
That's great, because sometimes I worry that all of my interests and passions were developed and frozen when I was about 10. And so just all the things I liked then, I still like, except that they're my job now. And I try to cultivate new interests and remain curious about the world. But I do have these kind of core nerdy passions that have just stayed with me. And I always am impressed and heartened when I meet and talk to people who developed really life-defining interests as adults. I think that's great. That suggests that we could all be a brand new day away from developing some new interests that will change the course of our lives. So that's exciting. You're living proof.
It is exciting.
Let's get to drafting with one more bit of prelude, which is, this is going to be hypothetical. Obviously, we engage in a lot of hypotheticals here at Effectively Wild, and we have entertained questions about superheroes and baseball before, and also many superpowers for actual baseball players, and how different would baseball be if players could do this or could do that. So this is right up our alley, but we're not entirely in the realm of hypothetical here. I mean, we are, because we're talking about fictional characters, even though they're real to us. But there is a lot of literature. There's a lot of comics canon in which superheroes have played baseball. And sometimes also baseball players have taken the field with superheroes. We've had actual comics crossover events. So I wondered if you two could just throw out any examples that you would recommend to people, or that maybe you've drawn on in developing your draft strategy here. Just what are kind of the canonical pantheon examples of baseball comic book crossovers?
Ben, I talked to you for an article that was specifically about one comic, which was West Coast Avengers Annual #2, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest comics ever made. Don't actually read it and tell me otherwise, because I don't want to know. I read it when I was a kid and I absolutely loved it. But it begins with the West Coast Avengers and the Avengers playing a game of baseball in the Astrodome with Wonder Man pitching and Thor at bat. And yes, Thor is using Mjolnir as his bat. It is absolutely spectacular. It also involves Thor hitting what clearly is going to be a home run until Silver Surfer bursts through the Astrodome's dome and tells them there's a crisis going on. And the whole thing is absolutely spectacular. That is, I mean, that you really get a sense as to like what the hierarchy would be on the field and where everyone would be playing while you read that comic. It's incredible. But I mean, the other one I would say is like probably the most inseparable comics from baseball history are the X-Men. X-Men have always played baseball. They've always played baseball, and that is a really, really big thing. I don't really have any specific issues for that one, but that was a thing that they used to just do, where the different teams would get together and they'd play baseball, which was a very charming thing and a very Marvel thing, because their whole thing is the world outside your window, so they want to seem more realistic. The last one I'm going to say is not an actually inside comics crossover. They, for a long time, used to have regular softball games between Marvel and DC Comics, the actual publishers. And there was a gauntlet thrown down at San Diego Comic-Con where Steve Wacker, the new editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, said, we're bringing it back when we move out to L.A. We're going to bring the softball game back. So if you live in the L.A. area, keep an eye out, because you might see your favorite Marvel and DC creators battling on the softball field soon.
Anything you'd care to add, Tiffany?
I have a couple. One is not a comic thing. It was a live event, which is that Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson had a wedding ceremony at Shea Stadium, and Stan Lee officiated it. And if I remember correctly, because I was talking to someone who had originally had a press pass for it, but if I remember correctly, it was the day that Doc Gooden came back. And a bunch of like the pop culture press ended up getting their press credentials booted because the actual real important sports writers needed to be there, which I find amusing. But then I have two other non-superhero recommendations for people interested in reading comics about baseball. And one is James Sturm's Gollum's Mighty Swing, which is really interesting. It's a cool, like, historical fiction graphic novel about a Jewish, like, traveling team and kind of the myths that we create through baseball and also through culture. And then the other one is to read some Peanuts. There's a lot of baseball stuff in Peanuts. Charlie Brown is a Giants fan, and he also has a favorite baseball player named Joe Schlabotnik, who, like, you never see, and he's always, like, on his way down, I assume, to single A, and then, like, he's, like, the worst player and exactly the kind of player that you think Charlie Brown would be obsessed with. And going back to read those baseball strips, I think there's a couple collections that you can pick up that are just the baseball Peanut strips, and they're so charming and funny.
I think Joe Schlabotnik was in the Angels system, right?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, they called him up immediately after he was drafted, as they tend to do. Yeah, a little prematurely. Yeah, Peanuts was foundational for me, and anyone who's interested in hearing more about that. Earlier this year, I went on the excellent Ellen Adair's podcast about baseball movies, Take Me Into the Ballgame, and we did 2+ hours on Charlie Brown's All-Stars, the second Peanuts animated special. The baseball one, or one of the baseball ones, where we talked at length about my history with Peanuts, my encounter with Charles Schultz himself as a kid. I had lunch at his ice arena. He stole a French fry off my plate. I have never been so starstruck in my life. It was amazing. So yes, I still have a great soft spot for Peanuts and have tried to pass that along to my daughter as well. There were several years as a kid when my Christmas lists every year, and my birthday is Christmas, so Christmas list was big for me. That was the only time I was getting gifts. My Christmas list just consisted of every Peanuts thing in the world. Was just the entirety of, because I didn't want to limit myself to, like, individual, because there was at least a theoretical possibility that I could just acquire every bit of Peanuts merch, which I never quite fulfilled that ambition, but I came close. And a lot of it is still stored in various closets at my house and my mother's. Okay, so let's do this draft. That'll do it for the free preview of today's Effectively Wild. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to listen on and hear whatever wisdom and wit await, we would love to have you. You can visit patreon.com/effectivelywild to access the rest of this episode and plenty of other exclusive content. Weekly subscriber-only episodes, monthly bonus shows, our Discord group, our live streams. Either way, we will be back with another episode soon, which will appear in full on this feed. Until then, we wish you well and thank you for your support of Effectively Wild, whatever form it takes.